17, verse 14. Janena gasya gamyunjan sarvatosya cha madbhayam sadhu nam abhadram eva syad asadu damane krite. Translation: whoever causes offenseless living beings to suffer must fear me anywhere and everywhere in the world. By curbing dishonest miscreants, one automatically benefits the offenseless. Purport: dishonest miscreants flourish because of cowardly and impotent executive heads of state. But when the executive heads are strong enough to curb all sorts of dishonest miscreants in any part of the state, certainly they cannot flourish. When the miscreants are punished in an exemplary manner, automatically all good fortune follows. As said before, it is the prime duty of the king or the executive head to give protection in all respects to the peaceful, offenseless citizens of the state. The devotees of the Lord are by nature peaceful and offenseless, and therefore it is the prime duty of the state to arrange to convert everyone to become a devotee of the Lord. And thus automatically there will be peaceful, offenseless citizens. Then the only duty of the king will be to curb the dishonest miscreants. That will bring about peace and harmony all over human society. Translation: whoever causes offenseless living beings to suffer must fear me anywhere and everywhere in the world. By curbing dishonest miscreants, one automatically benefits the offenseless. Several times we see here the word offenseless is used. Anaga, not having any sin or whatever. For animals, of course, there is no sin as such. Just like for plants, they have no sin. They just stand there and grow, whatever. So they're not sinless in the normal sense of the term, unless we think weeds are sinful because they're interrupting our crops or something. But otherwise, we don't consider them to be sinful. And similarly, animals, generally, according to the Vedic literature, they don't commit sin, because they don't have a power of judgment to say what is right and wrong and then act. Right? So in other words, the tiger kills a deer. It's not sinful. And generally we see that animals, they don't go beyond their quota. They take enough to survive, and then they don't overeat, in other words. So in the wild, we generally don't see fat tigers or fat animals. They're not overweight. They may have plenty of food, but they don't go overweight. They take what they need and whatever, and then they're okay, like that. So human is a little bit different because we have very high intelligence, plus we got a strange mind that wants to accumulate things and gets interested in all sorts of enjoyments which are beyond what you need. So that is why we have the laws of Dharma, to control that tendency of the human being to go beyond what is necessary. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. You have to survive, you have to eat, whatever, that's okay, like the animals. But the human being expands these things unnecessarily. So the eating can get expanded beyond what is necessary, or the defense can go beyond what is necessary, or whatever. All these things can go beyond the normal limits of the animal kingdom. And that's where we get the problem, because people don't want that control. We have the laws, and then people don't want to follow the laws. So, we know that the Varnashram system is the system of the Aryans, who are considered to be the civilized people. So we measure a civilized person by his willingness to accept those laws that are set up by the Varnashram system. In other words, what is sinful and what is not sinful. those standards set by that system are considered to be the standards of civilization. Other civilizations of the world also have standards. You see, religions have their standards, different civilizations will have their standards, whether it is Egyptian civilization or whatever, ancient Syrian civilization, Babylonian civilization, ancient European civilizations or whatever, even the more primitive groups. They all have some sort of laws, but not so refined. So we get a certain level of refinement, then we say called civilized. So that's the Aryans with their Varnashram system. That's considered to be the standard for good advancement. As Bhaktivinoda says, this is a scientifically arranged system. So it's very precise in what it wants to do and what its goal is. Okay? And we'll see that the goal ultimately is to get out of the material world, which is completely different from all the other societies in the world. So we have Artha, Dharma, Kama, and then we have Moksha. Get out of the material world. And of course beyond that we get Prema. So the goal of the system is ultimately a spiritual goal, going beyond the material world. And to aid that, then we have some limitation on people within the material world. Even if they don't have that goal, they should be limited in their enjoyment to some degree. At the same time, because they're less qualified, they're given some enjoyment. You can enjoy, but within limits. That's basically what the Varnashram system is. So that's this good section. It limits that enjoyment to some degree. The negative aspect, of course, is that people get stuck on the Artha and the Kama. They want to get the material enjoyment out of it, and they don't go any further. So that's maybe the negative aspect. It keeps you in the material world. So anyway, that's at least as far as eating, sleeping, mating, defending. The Varnashram system gives the rules for the minimum rules for people to follow. But we see that it's quite flexible also, because we have different rules for different grades of people according to qualification. The Varnashram system understands that not all people are same qualified equally. Some are less intelligent, so you can't give them too many choices. Those who are more intelligent, you can give them more choices. Okay? In other words, it doesn't say everybody's absolutely all equal in one sense. Some people are more intelligent, some are less intelligent. Okay? So accordingly, we have different types of rules for the different grades of people. It's according to gunas. Okay? So tamagun are considered to be less able to think properly. Rajagun, medium, sattva, better. So accordingly, they have different sets of rules to follow. So it's quite an interesting system how it's set up, recognizing different grades, etc. And the king is responsible for implementing the system. Okay? But the king has got a lot of Rajagun in him. So the ideal king in the Varnashram system has Rajagun plus Sattvagun. That is the safeguard for the king. If he has no Sattvagun, then it's going to be a disaster. He'll exploit everybody. He'll use the system for his own advantage. So that's why the Sattva has to be there. And then under the Sattva, then he takes the advice of Brahmanas and he doesn't over-control. And he understands there's a spiritual relationship between human society and their ultimate goal. The king is therefore instrumental in safeguarding the whole structure and keeping it in order. As we see here, you must punish all the people. This is part of the Rajagun aspect. But then the Sattvagun aspect is he has to know exactly how to punish, when to punish, and when not to punish, etc. Who is innocent, who is not innocent, who is guilty, etc. So as I said, the animals, they don't have sin as such. So we don't really punish the animals and the plants or anything like that. At the same time, in order for the human being to survive, we do need to take some sort of life somewhere in the food chain. So the rule is minimize the violence, take the lesser developed living entities rather than the more advanced living entities. So it's always plant over animal. And if it's animal, it's lower animal over higher animal. And of course it's according to need. If there's no need, take the minimum of the animal, of the plant food. If there is a need, you could take animal, but only in emergency. And then that's also according to gunas. Lower people have more freedom to eat whatever they want, and the Brahmins have more control over everything, more restrictions on what you can eat and what you cannot eat, etc. Therefore the animals, as I said, don't have sin, but then again, we have animals that do attack people, and if the tiger attacks you, then you have a right to defend yourself. So in that sense, we can say it's not sinful for the animal, but nevertheless, he's going beyond his, he's intruding on the human being, so the human being can commit violence in that condition. As for the human being, it's a human being that has the concept of sin, what is right and what is wrong. And all human civilizations or groups have some sort of rules to control the violence. But then some have less rules, some have more rules, etc. Then in order to judge the rules, then we have to have a whole system of justice. So we get law courts and judges to judge who is innocent, who is guilty. And we get punishments, and each society will have different types of punishment. For a thief, you get different punishments. In some places they cut off your arms or your fingers or something. Other places they fine you. Other places they jail you. According to the country, they'll have various types of laws as well. But who's to decide the sin and the non-sin? So that's what the scripture does. It decides who is sinful and who is not sinful. But because there's all sorts of circumstances, just like the tiger, you don't kill the tiger, but if the tiger attacks you, you can kill it. Or if the person, generally we don't have violence against other human beings, but if somebody attacks you, then you can also defend yourself. Okay? So there are some intricacies of justice that have to be judged properly. So therefore we always have to have an efficient governing system with efficient law enforcers and then judges to see who is innocent and to see who is guilty. We see in the modern world that the system is there, but it gets corrupted. So they may arrest the wrong people. They may arrest the people who are not guilty, or they may punish the people who are not guilty, or the opposite. They don't arrest the people who are guilty, and if they do arrest them, then they don't give them any punishment for some reason or other. Sometimes it's due to great ignorance, sometimes it's due to great corruption. So that's what makes this whole system a little bit shaky sometimes, and people get frustrated with it because of the imperfections of the system. The system itself is not wrong, but the way it's implemented and the people involved in it give a lot of problems to the system. So ultimately, it's that leader who's responsible for that. Here, Parikshit's responsible for implementing everything properly and seeing that the innocent are not getting disturbed in any way. So it takes a very efficient management system to make sure that the system is carried out properly and purely. And when it isn't, then it all breaks down. So there's a great responsibility upon the leader of the country. And as I mentioned, the leader, if there's all sorts of activities going on in the kingdom which are all sinful, then the king is responsible. The leader is responsible for that, and he has to get the result of that. He gets the karma for that. So becoming a leader is a very serious position. And if one's not qualified for it, everybody suffers. That person will have to suffer because he gets everybody's karma, because it's all the people, he can't control the people. And if the system isn't working properly because there's so much corruption, then everyone is going to be dissatisfied, and they'll start revolting or whatever against that system. So therefore we do have to have that perfect system. But Prabhupada gives us a very interesting solution to the whole problem here. Make everybody into devotees. Don't worry about what system is there. Just make everybody into devotees, and they naturally become sinless or offenseless. They don't want to commit sinful activities. They minimize the violence. And with that basis, then everything goes on very peacefully. And then the king doesn't have so much of a problem. The police don't have a problem because there's nobody committing any crimes. So they just have to make sure that everybody is. The real people that cannot be corrected, those are the ones that get caught and get punished. So that's a very interesting proposal, because we do know that one of the characteristics of bhakti, the second characteristic actually, that manifests in sadhana is subhada. The devotee develops all good qualities. So it's a natural result of bhakti that the person should have good qualities, which means he naturally follows all of the scriptural rules which are meant for advancing in spiritual life. In other words, whatever are the rules within the scriptures for karma yoga, varnashram, all the sinful activities, naturally a devotee will avoid those things, because it is all a type of violence. And on the other hand, he'll be very peaceful, and he'll be very charitable to all people, very merciful to all people in the world. So this is a peaceful, offenseless citizen. So if people develop these qualities, then there's no problem for anyone. There's no problem for the administration or for the police department or for the justice department. Minimum of problems are there. And then we get a very, very nice society or whatever like that. So this implies in this purport what Prabhupada is, we start from the bottom and go upwards. Rather than try to start making a government at the top, we start at the bottom. And we influence the people at the bottom to become more and more devotional. And by that, they give up their bad qualities and they develop nice qualities like that. And then with that in mind, then naturally it filters upwards and it purifies the rest of the system. So in this way we don't have to worry so much about trying to institute any government as such, but rather we just concentrate on preaching and somehow or other influencing more and more people. The trick, of course, is how to fulfill that prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that his name will be heard in every town and village, when we also have the principle, don't preach to the faithless people. So most of the people are faithless, so we can't preach to them. So we say, chant the holy name, accept Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's preaching. Can't preach to people. We like to do that, but then it's an offense also. So how can we feel Lord Chaitanya's mission of converting everybody? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the method is for people that don't have faith, that we don't preach like that. But we do preach. We let them hear the holy name. So we let them hear the holy name, we can give them prasadam and things like this. That's all. Don't speak to them. Just expose them to Hare Krishna. And by constant exposure, then they get a little faith. When they get a little faith, then you can preach to them more and more. So this, of course, we can say this is more like outreach preaching or something like that, or indirect preaching. Some people may think, oh, that's not good. We got to directly tell everybody you're a rascal and a fool, and give up your sinful habits and become purified, whatever. But Obviously, most people aren't going to listen to that. So that's the indirect method is also there. And even Lord Chaitanya says that indirect method. Expose them at least, that's all, without having to preach to them. And once we find people are serious, then we can seriously preach to them. And they will accept the message or whatever. So therefore we have two types of preaching. Direct preaching, which is there in the books, etc. And then we have the indirect preaching, where we just have to gradually make people a little bit favorable, have them develop faith somehow or other by indirect means. And of course we can't have one or the other, we have to have both. These are the two types of preaching. And the direct preaching, of course, is through speaking and through distribution of books, etc. The other is simply through getting people to hear the holy name or take prasadam, etc. So both are very good endeavors. If we do both together, then we can have good success. As I say, we cannot always judge the result. We don't know. We can't see the result because we can't see the Atma inside the body. So we don't know who's developing, who's getting influenced or whatever. But if we accept the scriptural judgment, we know that the holy name is very, very powerful. So even the demon, if he hears it, he gets affected. What to speak of this neutral person? They get affected, but we may not see it. So we see Ajamil got affected, and he didn't even know he was affected by the name. But all of his karmas got destroyed and everything. And the Yamadutas couldn't touch him because he accidentally chanted the name. So we should never underestimate the power of the holy name to purify people, even if we don't see the immediate result now. There's some connection that's taking place, and eventually it will manifest, and they'll develop into better persons. So this is therefore one way in which we can create peace in the world, by such methods: the indirect method, the direct method, and then more and more people become devotional, and then they become offenseless and peaceful. And this will change the society. Okay, any questions?
I'm just going to say, sometimes when I go out doing books, usually it's really hard to find people that are even slightly interested. And all of a sudden you meet someone who's like really just so grateful, and then you find out they've been eating regularly in our restaurant.
Okay,
Just eating regularly at the so grateful.
They start out just that maybe they like the taste or something, or maybe they're vegetarian or whatever, but they like the taste, and then after they take that for so many times, they get more interested. So that means it's not just a mental effect or a physical effect, it's actually the Atma is getting transformed through that because of its prasadam, so therefore they get transformed. So, very good system.
I'm just wondering, in ISKCON we had it's called ISKCON law. And that, what is that? Is that established by the GBC?
Law? ISKCON law. We have a law book. Yeah, well, the GBC passes some resolutions every year, so these become the laws, either laws or guidelines or whatever, whole series of things on different subject matters. So they're collected and they become the law book for ISKCON. So therefore, there's different subject matters for, standards for temples, or conduct of a temple president or a leader, etc. How to resolve disputes or whatever like this, and so we got all sorts of rules for preaching, different rules for preaching, etc. So if we have a little doubt about what you should do or not do, you may find some rule in the GBC laws to give you a little guidance on what's the proper way to act in that particular situation. It's on the internet also, that law book. And it's of course being edited now and whatnot. Under Sringa Kavacha, he's in charge of editing the whole thing. You can ask him. What are the divisions there of the law book?
What is it? guidelines, statements, votes of thanks, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but what areas it covers? Like deity worship is one I know.
Okay, the overall topics.
Topics, yeah.
You've got like Srila Prabhupada's the first one.
Okay.
Then GBC, then ISKCON, the ministries.
Yeah.
Then deputies, all the sort of
Administrative posts.
administrative officers. Then temples, ISKCON temples and stuff around the world.
Yeah.
Then appointments, finances,
Guru. Guru's Diksha. Yeah, Guru is there, the Diksha, how what's the standards for Diksha and this and that, and there's also things like that. Yeah. How many laws have we got now? You know the number?
In the database so far, I could give you exact number, more than 500.
500.
And that's only from 2000 up till the present day. We haven't done everything before 2000 just because the language is really weird.
Oh, you couldn't correct them all.
The Brilliant in Canada is working on it.
Oh, okay. And there's also disciplinary measures, how to discipline people who are off or whatever. Of course, there's child protection in there also, I think, CPOs in there and all things like that, whole section on that, and abuse in general, I think, domestic abuse or whatever, all these things are in there. Yeah. So these are not country laws, these are only within ISKCON. Yeah? And of course, if a person does a serious thing, it's also a crime in the state also, so we can't handle that. We give it to the state to handle.
In the Vedic times,
Yeah.
they had like lawyers and barristers. If someone was seeking some kind of justice, how did they go about it?
Well, the Vedic system, I'm not quite clear, but obviously the king was in charge and he had to judge things also, or he had ministers who would have to judge. Because as I said, the law is there, but there's always, circumstances or this and that, so you can't really tell sometimes. So it's up to someone to decide. So then they'll have like a court or something there, and they'll have a judge. And probably they're going to have the Brahmins involved also, because the Brahmins know the scriptural laws very nicely, and also the exceptions and how to deal with all these intricacies, etc. And because there are different laws, you have to figure out just which law is applicable to that particular situation. So you need a person of great intelligence, so probably the Brahmins are going to be involved also in that. And they're also more neutral, so therefore they've come up with a better decision.
It seems like there's a tendency to blame the others, like in this text here, and in the next text to come.
Yeah.
So the bull says it's no one's fault, it's just that's the way it is, it's common. But nowadays people, they take lawyers and barristers because they want to put the fault on someone else. They never ever say, it's like you see nowadays that in the companies, the big companies, the CEOs, they get done because they look at someone the wrong way, or they do some silly things, and then you go to the solicitors going after them for Govardhana. And they end up paying big money just to get out of the waste of time. But it seems the tendency of people now, which is when the other person, you think the barrister and the solicitor started, is to blame the other party more than the living time. The living time, they're going to say, like the bull is going to say, well, we're partial. Whose fault is it? Who's the culprit?
Yeah.
And they will, you don't point at the culprit, but they will get the result itself.
Yeah. Well, as far as the state is concerned, they do have to kind of find the responsible person, obviously, for the crime. But as far as the individual is concerned, it's that we do understand the law of karma, and that we're getting something that we probably deserve anyway from past lifetime. So they're not too involved in getting the revenge part of it also. But then the king is responsible for actually, making sure that people aren't breaking the law.
Just further on that discussion about ISKCON law and in relation to
the civil law, whatever.
Law,
Yeah.
There is a committee right now working on the Constitution.
Yeah.
And in countries that have effective legal systems, whenever there's a dispute going on in the society, they'll always, when it comes to law courts, they'll always refer to the society's constitution to make their decisions, just like what happened in New York.
Yeah.
They referred to the governance system within ISKCON.
Yeah.
And they said actually the ISKCON governing body has decided that this temple should not be sold, therefore that's it. So therefore, these things have been kind of percolating away in the background for years, but finally the GBC started to kind of push these things forward.
So that means they have to think very carefully about the Constitution, how they word it, so that we get protection within the society. They can be implemented from outside as well. If somebody goes outside the system, it goes back to the legal system, then it comes back to the Constitution again.
In societies where you have like irrational legal systems or unreliable legal systems,
which is hopeless.
It's hopeless, but in countries like US, Australia, England, places like that, they'll always refer back to the society's constitution.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, it's in relation to at the beginning of the class you mentioned the Aryan race.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering from your understanding, who are the Aryan race? When you read in history books, they say that they were Indo-European, Caucasian, no? Coming from Europe. But then we hear that actually the Aryans were in India, isn't it?
As far as our acharyas, they don't, in other words, we have modern history or whatever. Under the British at one time, they had their little theory that it was an invasion, and then they established the Vedic culture in India from somewhere up in the Black Sea area. They came down or whatever. Then I think that's been changed because they understand that, archaeologically speaking, that the Harappan civilization, which is maybe one of the oldest city civilizations in the world, maybe. And it goes back before 5000 BC, I think. That was actually, it didn't come from anywhere. It was already there. So it didn't come from outside to get there, because the British were tracing it back to maybe 2000, 3000 BC. The invasion took place. But then afterwards they understood there was no invasion. There was already a civilization there before that. So there was no invasion as such. So then they tried to trace language-wise. So we have the Indo-European basic language from which Sanskrit comes, but from which all the other European languages also come. That's another linguistic theory, but that also is not proven really that that's how it happened either. So, but there is a tendency to put among scholars, to put the origin outside of India somewhere else. Whereas now the Indians want to stick it back in India. Who's right, who's wrong, I don't know, but there is, as I said, some evidence to show that didn't come from outside. It was actually within India itself. The ancient civilization was there. Where before that, when at 10,000 BC, we don't know. That's, of course, archaeology, etc. As far as Bhagavatam and scripture, there is no, it's the opposite. Everything goes out of India to everywhere else. So we can say the original Aryans are the original civilization established by Manu and others, and then it prospered and came down in India, then it spread to other parts of the world, up to China and Tibet and Europe, etc.
And what was their color?
Color? It's not described. I think there were various colors, because we have someone like Vedavyas, he was black. But then we have other people very white, like Pandu was very white. And of course in the spiritual world we have some of the cowherd boys are red, and some are dark blackish, and some are pale white, and some are green, and some are orange, etc. All sorts of colors. So it's not really state. I don't know who like for the Harappan civilization, which is archaeological, what complexion, I don't know whether they figured out which complexion they were.
So the complexion that they describe as being white and blue eyes and all those things.
Oh, blue eyes? Oh, you mean that's the German one, the German Aryan. You're talking about the German.
Even sometimes I read, and sometimes some drawings or paintings from devotees, they put all their sages in.
Oh, in their pale color. Oh, okay. Well, it looks like some of the sages were pale in color, but some are blackish, like Vasudev. So it's not that everybody was pale in color. I think even recently, one of the Madhva, Raghavendra, I think, was blackish in color also. He was just one of the saints in Madhva's line. But Madhava, on the other hand, I think was very pale, and probably Ramanuja was very pale also. Generally, we have the Brahmins in South India; they're pale, but color-wise, I don't know. It could be mixture.
At what point Indians became so dark? Is that other invasion?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Probably they're always there. There's probably always been a mixture there. Okay. Hare Krishna.